Professor Spectrum, experts in spectral technology.
Welcome back to Professor Spectrum. I'm Naomi Potter and I work at Portable Spectral Services as our spectral geologist.
And I'm Sophie Shironi and I work as one of the spectral analysts. So today we're going to be answering some of the frequently asked questions, particularly surrounding our Micro-XRF analysis.
So here at Portable Spectral Services we have two Micro-XRF instruments. These are the Bruker M4 TORNADO and the Bruker M4 TORNADO Plus. And the difference between the two is that the M4 can analyze from sodium down to uranium, whereas the M4 Plus has the ability to actually measure some of those lighter elements and can measure from carbon down to uranium.
Okay, so let's get started. How does the Micro-XRF work?
So the Micro-XRF works by scanning your sample at a very high resolution. So the X-ray gets sent down to your sample and it has a spot size of 25 microns. So it's very good at scanning samples at a very high resolution. So you're generally looking around about that, 25 to 100 micron scale. And what it does is essentially the sample moves across the stage with the beam staying on the sample the entire time, and it literally just maps the surface of your material, and then it produces chemical element maps from the signal that it gets back from your sample.
Can you quantify the data at all, or is it all qualitative?
You can. So the data that's produced from the instrument is produced in a qualitative way, but then you can apply quantification to it. So we have calibrations that use fundamental parameters, and so it's essentially a standardless method. And what it does is it basically takes the signal that it's getting from your sample and it applies a calibration, and then from that you get your quantified data.
Okay. Is Micro-XRF dangerous?
The short and simple answer to that is no. So the Micro-XRF is enclosed, and so there's no risk of radiation and you don't get exposed to any radiation. So our M4 technician sits next to the instrument all day, every day, and it's totally fine.
Cool, so what are the limitations of Micro-XRF?
So some of the limitations are that it can't measure the lightest elements in the periodic table. So we have two instruments. The first one can analyze up to sodium, so the sodium is the lightest element it can analyze. The second instrument can go to carbon, so carbon is the lightest element, but it still can't measure elements like lithium and those kind of very light elements. The second limitation would be that it is an enclosed instrument, so it's about yay big, which means that your samples can only be so big in order for it to actually fit in the instrument. So the maximum scannable area is 19 by 16 centimeters. So although you can put larger samples in there, it's recommended that your samples are that size, so that is a minor limitation on the instrument. The other thing is that you can measure rough samples, but it is recommended that your samples are a flat surface because the quality of the data is going to be impacted by that rough surface. However, in comparison to some other instruments on the market that do a similar thing, this instrument is pretty versatile because you can put both small and large samples on it, and you can have a rough surface if necessary.
Why would you use the Micro-XRF?
So the Micro-XRF is good for several purposes. It's really good for helping you find elements of interest. So if you're looking for gold, for example, it can be really useful for basically scanning your sample and then very quickly being able to figure out where the gold is and what elements it's associated with. It's also good for understanding the texture of your sample and the minerals that are actually in your sample based on the variation in the abundance of different elements across the sample that you're analysing. And it's also just great for getting a better understanding at a very micro scale of what your rock is telling you.
Is it limited to geology only?
No, so as a geologist I generally go straight to the geological applications, but the instrument's actually used in a lot of different industries. So it's used in pharmaceuticals and electronics because it can scan samples of variable size and variable shape, and also it can get a lot of the elements in the periodic table. It means that it does have a lot of applications outside of the mining industry.
Can we get mineralogy from Micro-XRF data?
Yes, so when you collect data with the Micro-XRF, it produces spectra, and you can basically import that spectra into a secondary software that is also produced by Bruker, and it's called Amix, and this you can then use to use the chemistry from your sample to then determine the mineralogy of your sample.
So thanks for watching. I'm Sophie,
I'm Naomi.
and we'll see you